Hello again, this is Sarah Grinstead. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. This is new to all of us, so hopefully this will go smoothly and we won't have too many technical problems. So today the topic for the user group meeting is commitments and planned use of carry forward and how to record those in AggieBudget. So to start off with, before we get into the subject matters, just wanted to do a little Zoom housekeeping to make sure we're all on the same page. So all of the participants are muted as you have joined the meeting, so we shouldn't have any sound interference. And so we do encourage questions. So we want to be able to track them and answer them in good time. So if you can use the Zoom chat feature, I showed the little icon right there for you, and send your questions to Matt Delano, who's helping me manage this session. When we stop for questions partway through the session, we will address as many of the questions that you all have as time allows. And lastly, we are recording this session and we'll post it on the AggieBudget website for future playback and for those who may have missed it. All right, so talking points for today. We're going to talk about how to record funding commitments within AggieBudget, how to record planned use of carry forward within AggieBudget, which those two are different things, but in the same screen. And then lastly, Matt is going to give us a quick demo on a couple of reports that would be useful to a lot of people. So if some of you joined our user group meeting last June, we went through this material, but especially with the timing of the budget cycle starting and some of the complexities of how commitments and planned use of carry forward need to be recorded in AggieBudget, we thought it would be very useful to get a refresher. So I wanted to first remind you, if you were at the previous user meeting, of the implementation and navigation checklist that I put together with the help of many other people. And one of the steps within that checklist was entering known commitments. And so we'll be posting this slide deck after the presentation, but there's a hyperlink there that you can navigate to the entire checklist. But because a lot of commitments are handled in the dean's office or vice chancellor's office, a good first step in the budgeting process is to get the commitments in first, and especially have the dean's and vice chancellor's office put those in so that by the time the department users get into budget, those funding commitments are already in their file. So just a quick reminder on that, but I know people at different levels will need to know how to input commitments because we'll probably all be doing it at some point. All right, so to get into the first section, talking about funding commitments, there are different steps in AggieBudget that you have to do, and I'll take you into the system and show you some examples once we walk through these different conceptual items here so that you can actually see it. But step one is you have to pick an account, and everything's, as you probably, most of you know by now, in AggieBudget, everything's built out at the account level. And so you pick the account that you want the commitment to be recorded as. And then the next step is you pick a budget group, which, if you're familiar with the sources and uses layout, the account block layout in AggieBudget, you have different budget groups where your different sources and expenses are recorded. So in this commitment section, there are budget groups listed both for sources and for uses. So, and they're all in one drop-down box. So when you want to actually pick a funding commitment budget group, there are only these ones listed here that you can select from to actually record a funding commitment. So there's base budget, there's transfers in and out, there's NUD, recharge, etc. And this selection, this number 2 selection, is the most important selection, and it drives how this transaction is recorded, or this commitment is recorded in AggieBudget. And I'll show you that a little bit later. So then the step 3 is just kind of a more defined description of the commitment type. So whether it's coming in from ACCD commitments or from it's for equipment, different things, so that you can kind of have some descriptors of what this commitment is actually for. Next, there's a description field, which is just an open field where you can type in whatever you want, whether it's a reference number to an attachment for a document that you've attached in AggieBudget so you can have further documentation about the commitment. It's really whatever you want to put in there. And then lastly, it is the funding type, where you select whether it's a commitment coming from central campus, or whether it's coming from another unit across campus or within your own unit. So a question that I get frequently is, what is the difference between a within unit transfer and a between unit transfer? And simply put, the between unit transfer is between any level 4 orgs. So if it's between, you know, like for instance, the Office of Research and the College of Ag, where it's passing from one college to another, or from one administrative unit to another. Whereas within unit transfer is everything else within your own unit. So if OR has commitments between their departments, it would be a within unit transfer. And then the last step would be to enter the commitment amount for the year. And there are out years in the commitment screen, so you can automatically roll forward the numbers when next year comes. You don't have to necessarily redo all of the commitments each year for just that one year. And then just something to note, especially as you're referencing back to this presentation, if you get a little red dot as you're entering your commitments in there, just save and refresh and it should disappear. That red dot appears when that budget group hasn't been used in that plan file before. And so saving it will just get it in there, and it's the red dot's not anything serious. All right, so to run through a couple of examples, I just wanted to show, partly because I'm an accountant, so this is in kind of a journal entry form in a way that makes sense to my brain, from start to finish, how a commitment can be recorded. So, and I'll show you how each group records different things. So this first example is campus provides one-time seed funding to support a program director's salary and benefits. The dean's or vice chancellor's office then transfers the funding to the department. So in a nutshell, what's happening here is central campus is giving funds to the dean's office, and then the dean's office is then passing those funds along to the department. So these 3 different boxes here below are the plan files in the campus, the dean's office, and the department. And so the way that we've done this last year is, especially for central campus, we in BIA have recorded the commitments for you in AggieBudget. So we've recorded the first 2 lines here of the budget transfer out in the campus plan file to, with it being described as central funding, and then passing it along to the dean's office as a budget transfer in from central campus. And then depending on how the unit chooses to build out AggieBudget, they may just have their plan files rolled up to a very high level. And so if they don't, have anything that's built down to super detailed levels, it may just end there, or it may not. But if you keep going, you then have a budget transfer out of the dean's office into the department plan file to make sure that the commitment is fully recorded in the department's plan file. So 150 of committed funds is in the department. There's essentially a net zero impact in the dean's office, and in the central campus, our own plan files, we have a distribution of funds of 150. So our next example is where a unit provides a share of startup funding to faculty members' account, $100,000 over the next 5 years. So just what's happening here, it's just one step instead of two in this commitment that's going from the department to the faculty account. So in the department plan file, it'll be a budget transfer out, and in the faculty plan file, it will be a budget transfer in. And if you notice in the funding type, it's a within unit transfer. It's not a between unit because it's not passing over college lines. It's within your own college. And then we have recorded both this upcoming fiscal year as well as all the out years. And then in our third example, we've got the Office of Research commits to providing ACCD funding to the College of Engineering, $30,000 for 3 years. So what is happening here? It's one unit passing funds to another. So the Office of Research is giving funds to the College of Engineering's dean's office, and then they pass that along to the department account. So the way it's recorded in the Office of Research plan file, it's recorded as a budget transfer out. And as a between unit transfer, you notice the difference there in that funding type column. You've got between unit transfer in the OR plan file and the receiving budget transfer in the dean's office. But then from the dean's office to the department plan file, it's a within unit transfer. Now, if the Office of Research just passes the funding straight to the department account itself, you would eliminate that second row, the dean's office plan file altogether, and it would just be recorded as a between unit transfer in the OR plan file and a between unit transfer in the department plan file. Essentially, you just want to show an outflow of funds in the Office of Research and an inflow of funds in the department plan file. Now, likely someone in the Office of Research, not likely, I don't think they can, record the College of Engineering's department side of this transaction. So the Office of Research will record their budget transfer out, and the College of Engineering will just record their line of a budget transfer in. Okay, so at this point, I want to stop and answer any questions that we can, since I know we talked through that quickly and there's a lot to it.
Yeah, someone asked, will COBOL entries be required this year?
Okay. So the question was, will COBOLs be required, entries be required this year? And the answer to that would be, I'm not sure whether you're referring to demarking them as COBOLs in AggieBudget or doing them actually in FISDS. So I'll just address both. I think in AggieBudget, we would highly encourage people to start using the COBOL ways of recording things in AggieBudget to get used to how it works and how to be able to set aside funds, which the next section will be talking about how to essentially earmark carry forward for specific planned uses. Now, as far as actually doing the recordings in FISDS, I think that it would be best to continue to do your COBOL entries as you normally would. But the future intent is for AggieBudget to have us move away from using FISDS and transition to just having the budget software earmark those funds and not have to rig our financial system to do that. And so that is the hope and the goal, but especially with people just getting used to using AggieBudget, I don't think it would be a good idea to let go of those things yet. All right. Next question. Does the budget transfer in include 19900 funding, FTEs, and benefits?
Yeah, does the budget transfers in includes 1900 funding, FTEs, and benefits? Yeah, budget transfers will include all budget adjustments. So if it's not in your base budget, then it'll show up as a budget transfer in.
Okay, can you read that one?
I noticed that there were two options for the transaction type budget, or base budget, and a separate one for fixed cost increases. When the transaction is base and current funds for fixed cost increases, which would we select? Let me think about that. I would say keep going. And all.
Okay, so we've got a question. Thank you, Shannon. We're gonna think about that a little bit more as we continue. And if we don't have an immediate answer for you right now, we'll definitely follow up on that. All right, is that it on the questions?
One more. Will future commitments in AggieBudget going forward a few years trigger any kind of reminder to make the actual financial transaction? No.
I think right now, AggieBudget, it doesn't write to our financial system. I know that this isn't the first time that question and the hope has come up, and I think that's something that's on our radar that down the line as we get more advanced in development, that we would like to be able to do that. But I think there's enough of a question mark in terms of the development and what the system can do that we can't fully answer that question with a lot of certainty right now. Okay, is that all on the questions?
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much for the questions. Okay, so the next section that we'll be going through is the planned use of carry forward. Now, I want to make sure that I explain thoroughly the difference between recording a commitment and recording a planned use of carry forward. So a commitment is you have funds that you've committed elsewhere for, whether it be, operations, or a commitment, an ACCD funding where you send it to another unit to support their research activity. And so it's a movement of source from one place to the other. Whereas recording planned use of carry forward is earmarking an expense in your budget. So it shows up in your uses. And this can be for any kind of expense that you have that you're essentially using carry forward instead of current operational funding to do it. So oftentimes, you don't need to, record every tiny little thing in your commitments section and call it out, but it's especially used for the bigger things, like you're planning to buy equipment, or you have some initiative where you're using a lot of temp employees all at once to accomplish a specific goal, or it's just something big usually that you're calling out that you want to use your carry forward for. As well as I know, there are there are a lot of units that they have quite a bit of carry forward, but when you actually talk about the carry forward that they have, it's not like they have $30 million in cash or carry forward that they can just use however they want. A lot of it's earmarked for construction or other things. So I wanted to make sure that that differentiation is clear so that we know how they're recorded in the system, because they are recorded quite differently. So the steps are the same, and the drop-down boxes are the same, but it's the selections within those drop-down boxes that really differentiates the two. And like I said, the step 2 is the most important one because it determines whether you're recording a source or a use budget group. So these are all the different use budget groups you have to choose from for whatever you're trying to record. So then next, the commitment type, it's the same ones as the commitments ones. They're just descriptor fields, and if it really doesn't fit into any one of those categories, there's the lovely all others as the catch-all. And so then again, you have your description field where you can put in whatever you want. And then in step 5, this is where, again, you have to pick and choose what you want. There's really only 2 options for how to record your planned use of carry forward. And it's those first two, the carry forward, COBOL, that you're earmarking your carry forward for future use. And then again, you enter the commitment amount by year, and you can do it in the out years. So I didn't want to belabor it too much. I just have one example here for a planned use of carry forward. And so the example is that your department plans to purchase a $900,000 piece of equipment from carry forward. So what's happening here, it's just one entry, and only the department records the entry. And you pick your budget group, you pick equipment and facilities, commitment type, equipment, and the funding type. Since you've already committed, it's a COBOL for $900,000 of expense. So that's the example on that one. And so before we take more questions, I wanted to actually go into the AggieBudget system and show you an example of how you can record something one way as a commitment and the other way as a planned use of carry forward, and show you that. So this is the main screen. I'm just using trading data, and it opens up to the summary. So how you get there is you go to the commitments tab, and in the commitments tab, this commitments tab is blank. So you add a commitment, and you select the account that you want. So I selected this training account. And then this is the step 2, picking the budget group that I said is the most essential part of what you're doing. So I'll pick let's see, budget transfer in. I guess I can use the example of, Central Campus is providing instructional equipment funding to you. So you want to record it, or Central Campus, or whatever is coming from outside of your unit. And commitment type, just put an equipment description. And I'll just leave the description blank because it's not needed. And it's coming from central funding, from Central Campus. And it's a $500,000 piece of equipment. So you can see here that it's automatically put it in a commitment sources line for $500,000. So then I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to create another commitment. And I'm going to pick the account, but this time I'm going to pick, if you keep scrolling down, you see all these uses ones down here. I'm looking for, they're not, equipment. And so I've recorded the budget group as equipment and facilities. I'm going to pick the same commitment type that I picked before as equipment. Leave the description blank, whoops. And put in, I'll even just put in central funding to show you how it's really, and then $500,000. And you see how it's now recorded negative $500,000 in commitment uses. And if you notice, I input everything exactly the same except this budget group was, but this first one was a commitment source and this second one was a commitment use, and it automatically recorded the amounts in different lines. And you notice I input both of them up here as positive because it does the calculation for you based on how you categorized. And so to then go back into the summary, you should have to see how it fully records. Now, please note there's other training data in this plan file. So all of these other numbers are just pre-populated, but where you can see the commitment came in, the source one came in and this budget transfers in line there, the 500,000. But then you look, where's the 500,000? And it might be because I need to save first. Let me save because I wasn't seeing it. Yep, I got the red dot. So I needed to save and refresh.
I don't think it's refresh. I think you should go there.
I guess it refreshes by itself. And there it is. It's recorded in, so just to scroll up so you can see it, in the uses section under the operating expense in the equipment and facilities line item that I chose, it records it as an expense. So it's coming into your totals here. So that's how they flow through. Now I'm just looking at the summary page. I'm not going to get into all the planning, but it flows through your planning and all of your planning is summarized here. So just wanted to kind of walk you through an example, a simple example there so you can see actually how the screen looks and how the entries are recorded very differently depending on which budget group you select. And so with that, I'll open it up back up for questions again, as many as we can answer. And if we don't have an immediate answer, we will certainly look into it and follow up with you as we can. So
Shannon asked, since we start recording commitments and use of carry forward with an account, what happens when we need to change the account/fund source? This happens frequently as one fund source is drained or a new fund source is identified.
Okay. So the question was, what happens or what do you do if you need to, since it's initiated by the account and everything's starts with the account, what if the account changes or the fund changes, as that happens frequently? So for right now, I'm presenting to you the way the commitment screen is as of right now. And in the environment that we're in right now, you're creating your annual budget where you are just building it as a snapshot in time. So, you know, say, for example, you have 2 months to get your budget done. So if it happens in those 2 months, you're going to have to delete that line and create a new one if the account changes within that 2-month time frame. So, but I think maybe what the question is getting at too is that those kinds of changes happen all throughout the year. And but just remember, you're not keeping track of these commitments in AggieBudget yet on a day-to-day basis. It's really just what's in the budget. And so I wouldn't be too worried about having to deal with all the constant changes that happen, because it's really just during your short budget creation window where you'll really have the opportunity or need to change the account, if that situation were to happen. Now, I can say that one of the most high priority things on our to-do list in development is building a more robust commitments module, to where this will be a lot more user-friendly and more able to keep up with the constant changes that we recognize come with commitments. I mean, we track a lot of commitments in the central campus, and factors are changing all the time. So we want to be able to build something that can keep up with the constantly changing environments around commitments. So I know there's more to come, definitely more enhancements, but this is the way it is right now. So.
Okay, there's another question. Are budget transfers out still recorded as a negative number? If so, you might want to make a note of, make that clarification.
Okay, that's a good question. Why don't we just go and do an example right now and see what it looks like for the group? Because if you had that question, probably everybody else has that question. Budget transfers out. We'll just pick whatever, it doesn't matter. Budget transfer out. And we'll put in, we'll clear these out so that we can just see the number 200. So the budget transfer out, it looks like the only time your negatives and positives are automatically done for you is just whether it's a source or a use. So if it's a budget transfer out, it looks like you do need to put in the negative number so that it shows properly as a reduction of your sources. So thank you for that question and the ability to clarify for people.
And then we have, can we specify the commitment spread instead of an even 12-month spread? The even spread doesn't truly reflect our actual and caused a negative positive variance. That was on our to-do list.
Yes, so in the current environment for this upcoming budget cycle, it doesn't look like you can. It's just a commitment for the year. So that will be the way it is. But I know, again, that there's enhancements and improvements that the AggieBudget team is looking into for the commitments module, to be able to do a lot more seasonality and different aspects. So I'll make a note of that and just make sure that that's on the AggieBudget team's radar as they're looking at developing it, to make sure that that's not forgotten about.
And I think that's all the questions. But if I miss someone's question, just resend it to me, please.
Okay. So go ahead and continue to send questions if you have them. I think at this point, I'll turn it over to Matt to do a reports demo. So go ahead, Matt.
Okay. One second. Okay. Hi, I'm Matt Delano. I'm do system operations and development for AggieBudget, part of BIA, budget office. I'm going to show you some of the changes and new reports we've got in AggieBudget. So before I get started, I want to go over a quick few UI changes that have happened recently. If you're new to AggieBudget, this won't make much of a difference to you, but if you've used AggieBudget in the past, you probably noticed the web client looks a bit different. So just really quickly, the newest change I've made is that we only have the Windows client now available in the production environment. I think it was getting confusing having the Excel client that no one used, so we just got rid of it. And now the other big change is that we've gotten rid of the gray menu bar that used to have a lot of the kind of links. We've moved them to their own libraries. So if you look at the quick links, there's a reports library and there's a help documents library. You can also access those features via the navigation pane. So for example, in the reports library, if you open it up, this has a list of all of our reports, and they've got categories like financial, labor. Click on one of those categories, it can be subcategories. You could even search for things like monthly variance. So hopefully this makes kind of finding and navigating the different reports and help documents easier as we move forward, because obviously these lists are only going to grow. Help documents looks very similar. Same kind of search features. Okay. That's all I've got for the kind of basic UI changes, but if people have questions, please let me know. Hopefully this is a little simpler. So next I'm going to demo the commitments report, kind of to piggyback on what Sarah was talking about. So if you go to, I've hopped into the training environment, so we can see the commitments that Sarah just saved. The reports library. And if you are someone who hops between the training environment and the production environment, as some new users might be doing, their production will be updated with things that training won't have yet. So there might be small changes, just be aware of that. Commitments lookup. So if you've never used the web reports, the funnel is your best friend. It looks like a little, well, I should say the filter button, which looks like a funnel in the ribbon. You simply click on it, and then all your parameters pop out, and you can adjust the data you're looking at accordingly. So if we were to look at, I believe it was TAC03. And so these were the commitments that Sarah just saved. And the nice thing with this report is that if you're using plan files, you're going to have all these different plan files across your unit that people have saved their commitments to, and there's not a great way to roll those up within the plan file. So when you come to this report, you can look at the org you want and then pull all the commitments for your org. This has some nice in-sheet filters. So for example, you can kind of sort these little buttons. That's what that doesn't make sense. I don't have a ton of data here, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for some of these sorting features, but you can do these in-sheet filters, which might be nice. So if you wanted to look at just equipment and facilities, you could filter that out. And select all again. You can sort by the different amounts. And then, so there's some kind of sorting and in-sheet filtering with this report. And then you can also extract to Excel. Click the Excel button. It'll open up Excel. So if you want to kind of pull all your commitments out of AggieBudget and drop them in a spreadsheet, or have them so you can filter quickly in Excel, you have that option as well. So this is just a good tool. Basically look up and categorize and review all your commitments across your organization. Okay. Next, I'm going to show out the data extractor. And the data extractor is a tool we developed. It's basically a report, but kind of pulls in your data in sort of a kind of flat file format. So if you are not seeing a report or seeing the data in a way that makes sense to you, you can pull the data out of AggieBudget, drop it into a Excel spreadsheet, and then do pivot tables or filters or however you want to adjust the data. So I'm going to hop into production for this one. Here we go. And with the reports library, it's currently saved under the financial reports. It's called data extractor. You'll notice you try to access it from the web. It'll give you a pop-up message saying that it's a desktop client report. So you'll have to access your desktop client. So you go here and click the icon. I think I've got it open, so I'm going to use that. So after you click that button, you'll be in a desktop client, and then you could do what you just did to access the data extractor. Financial, here's data extractor. We also have searched for it. Let's try that. If you can get this pop up with some different variables, for now, I'm just going to budget. I'm not going to go through all these filters right now. I might come back to them after I'm done, but I kind of want to show everyone how it looks after you pulled it. Another reason for that is I think most people, when they're pulling data, just kind of want all the data. And then when they put in their spreadsheet, they can filter and sort accordingly. So you may not want to be using the filters. So what happens you see is you'll get your data extractor report. It's got the run date, what you ran it for. The columns are you have your account, your org, sub-account, fund, sub-fund group, sub-fund group type, fund category, the different levels in its hierarchy. The idea being that it's got hopefully all the information you could ever want to sort and filter on and use pivot tables on. So budget group is probably an important one. The period and the actuals column. So this is going to pull in two different versions of data. I was on that refresh over screen. I'll go back and show that, but you can kind of select if I want actuals and budget or 2 years of actuals. So now we're showing actuals for 18-19 and for the budget for 18-19. And the way to kind of get this into Excel is you're going to want to snapshot this report. Up here is a little snapshot icon. You want to convert all these formulas into values. AggieBudget is built on Excel, so there's a lot of Excel formulas. So as you know, copying and pasting formulas to values can just get rid of all that. Something changes on you and limit the active sheet. So basically these default settings are fine. You'll see it pops a little Excel icon here, means now it's an Excel file. And so I'm going to save this locally. I put it on my desktop so I don't lose track of it. Yep. I'm going to close that. And I'm going to open it up. And so here's the file. I like to copy all the data and put in a new workbook just to keep it clean. And once you get to this point, depending on how good your Excel skills are, you can drop a pivot table on it. You can filter it. So for example, I will put a pivot table on it. And I will put, let's see, by count, my rows, one by actuals, amount. By budget group. I'll call budget group name. So obviously I'm not going to do an Excel tutorial, but you can see once you get the data to Excel, you can do whatever you want with it. So this might be helpful for people that are used to having direct access to the data, to be able to just pull the data out of AggieBudget, put it in a spreadsheet, and kind of manipulate it as they see fit. Obviously, if there is a specific report you want to see, definitely submit that request to us. We can take a look and see if we can implement that. But you know, we have a lot of units who have different requests for what they want to see, so this might be a good starting point if you kind of want to manipulate the data yourself. So go back, get rid of my snapshots. I'm going to go back to the refresh panel. So that was the refresh button will open what they call a refresh variables sheet. This is a desktop or a Windows client report, so it's going to have this formatting compared to the web client that has the little funnel button, but it's the same values just presented in this pop-up. The ones that are worth noting is if you want to change what we're calling the primary and comparison version. Basically a version is, you could say it's actuals for a certain year or it's budget data for a certain year. We've kind of built this in, so in the future when we have in your projections, we'll have multiple versions, so this kind of lets you pick and choose the versions you want to report on. So since we selected 18-19, we could have changed the prior year, changed the selected primary version to the prior year. So we select 17-18. We see we got preliminary budget, actuals, final. So changing this is driven off your fiscal year selection and will change the versions available in here. So if you've got the selected version, you're going to see the 18-19 versions. If you go prior year, you can look at the versions 1 year prior. So hopefully that's clear. Any questions? Yeah, questions?
There was one question about if this data extractor will ever have subtotals.
Probably not. I think the idea of the data extractor is that you would pull all the raw data yourself, and if you want to see totals, then you can put totals into your pivot table and run it that way. But I think the problem with having subtotals is then you're going to have duplicative data, and so you'd have to know to filter out the subtotals, which the idea is it's not a report, it's more of a kind of data extraction that you can go and then add filters if you want filters, or group data in certain ways. So I'm wary of adding totals that could kind of skew that unless someone knew to go and remove them.
Okay. Are there any other questions that were directly to you?
Go
to your chat here.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay. What do you want to call it a day?
I wanted to circle back. Thank you, Matt. I wanted to circle back on a question that we got earlier from Shannon. Thank you for always giving me stumping questions. I love it. So let me just go back to, so the question was, I noticed that there were two options for the transaction type, base budget, and a separate one for base budget fixed costs. When the transaction is base and current funds for fixed cost increases, which would we select? And I had to phone a friend, an expert, AggieBudget expert, to help me answer this question because I don't know why that line would really be in there for the commitment section for fixed cost increases. And I think the answer is that I don't think you'd ever have a reason to record a commitment for fixed cost increases because the fixed cost increases are built into the assumptions. They should automatically calculate from the labor data and the inputs that you've put in there. So I don't think you'd ever have a reason to use that line. That line it may be showing up there because it's, it recorded in a different way elsewhere in AggieBudget, and so it just kind of as a side effect shows up in this list. But I highly doubt you would ever have a reason to use that line. But something else in that question that I did want to address, which I didn't earlier, when you were talking about getting both base and current funds for any type of transaction where you're getting current funds for this year and then base funds going forward, you will have to enter two separate commitment lines for those, one for base funding and one for current funds, just so that you are aware. Let me see, it looks like two. Okay, so unless there are any other questions, we'll give another minute for questions to come in, and Matt will give us a little tour of the DS1 crosswalk since we have a few extra minutes.
So this is the DS1 crosswalk report. It's in the report library, financial, DS1 crosswalk. The idea with this report is that you can tie your data and AggieBudget to the FIS1 decision support. I think it's a report that we're all pretty familiar with. So you can kind of get some understanding of how the data is being presented in our in AggieBudget, give you some peace of mind. So I've opened the report here. I have selected budget as my organization. I'm looking at the January 2019, and it presents the format in the data in a format that's similar to the FIS1. So if I was more savvy, I could do this, not that, this. Oh. If Tiffany was listening, she'd get mad at me because I don't know how to make these side by side automatically. And so you can see, I just pulled an FIS1. And so you can see I've got appropriations. I picked an org that doesn't have any appropriations, but if I did, they'd show up here. And expenditures, you can see 184944, 184944, and the different categories. So this can be helpful to kind of see how your data looks in AggieBudget. I've been trying to use these little help boxes. So if you click on this help box, you can see there's some kind of information here on how you can tie your report. There's a few kind of things to be aware of, like we don't include balance sheet accounts, so things like that. And then you could drill into these and see what these are made up of as well. It's kind of boring. So I'm training development. Yeah, so that's kind of I've seen people ask questions about how, you know, these actuals don't make sense to me, and so this can be a tool you can use to verify them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the AggieBudget is certainly a different way to look at things, and it's unfamiliar. You know, and a lot of it, we've had to rely on FISDS reports. So this is a really good first step into the system to look at data and try to compare it to something that you're familiar with. And this can help you bridge the two.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to email me or the AggieBudget help desk, and we would love to help you out. So thank you and have a good rest of your day.